Hopefully the table doesn't collapse when I bang a hole in it. Where's Sally? Okay, so I did this at home. I just didn't, otherwise I would have had a million things to show you. But essentially, if a webbing falls off or breaks away, the easiest way to put it back on, you don't need to stitch it or anything, you can just put some basic bolts in the corner. So obviously this one hasn't broken, but I've just done it for a show. So all I used with this was just some basic bolts. You might want to get some nylock nuts, that's just what I had, but if you did have it, it'll do. But get some nylock nuts and then you can actually get some tension on it and also have it lock. You know, three or four is going to do for most of your boats. Your boat probably needs like 5 or 6, but the webbing isn't any stronger here than there. In fact, it's most of the load on a sail is from about that bolt onwards. So if you're going to do lots of bolts, do them all towards the start, because this one here is really not taking much load. So we worked out most webbings on most boats is only need to be about that long, but we still seem to keep doing them longer. Like I know on a 50 or 60 footer, I still only have to do the webbing about that long. So whatever you have in a bigger boat repair kit, just ask your sailmate to give you what you would need to fit that ring back on. And then just have a pre-cut length. You can have a cut length with a bit of sticky back around it. It won't fray, it won't change. Cover it in some double-sided tape. And that way when you stick it on, it actually bonds to it, so you're not having to play too much. Just get yourself some board, maybe a bit longer than this, but you know, something you can lay down in the deck, downstairs, or on the deck if you have to. But essentially just any nice bit of board that's not something part of the boat, because we all might have to sell these things one day. So all I did with this one was just drill a hole with just your basic house drill. Just got the drill bit that fit the screw, and that was it. It was a bit harder once the webbing started to go back together again, because it is polyester. It'll move once you've drilled it. So all I did was actually just get the screwdriver and shove it through the hole again, and that just made the hole really big. You're not worried about the bit in the middle. It's the bit that's sandwiching it together that's giving it the strength. So big washers to clamp it either side, and also that nylock nut just to tighten it down. You'll want to do a hand stitch. This is probably the strongest part of this whole thing. If all of this failed and that was still through the sail, it will pretty much hold on. The more stitches, the better. So whenever we're actually making sails, that's got a nice little bit to leverage it. Don't bang it with your hand. That's why I've got arthritis at age 32. Just use a hammer. Is this okay to use this on the... So get it all the way through. The further the better. Essentially, once that's done, don't even need a palm. Well, hopefully. I might just bang it a bit harder. You get that one on camera? Fail. I just didn't want to have a palm. So, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big needle, and it just went straight through. So, as you've probably seen, go and grab out one of your other sails and it'll tell you how to do it. You know, just finish it the way that the other ones are finished. This bit of stitching is actually just between the sail and the ring. So you'll want to do, if it's a big boat especially, the hand stitch is going to give you a bit more strength. So if you've got the time, just bang a few more rows and just keep using, you know, you can do a whole run across and then go back in again and bang the spike through again. We do it when we're making brand new sails, so don't worry about breaking the thread or anything like that. It just makes life easier. This stuff's pretty tough. You want to get some good wax thread. Get yourself some wax again, and if you want to be fancy, never twist your thread. But if you twist it, it will actually make it easier for you to pull it through. It won't look pretty, but it will make life easier. So anyone got any questions about that? Does anyone want to have a look at that?
Okay, so you loop, round. How do you finish it? What's a knot?
Just a knot. Just a basic knot. So if I wanted to just finish just a hand stitch so you can see it. need to bang it too hard. So if you, just going to have to bang it because I don't have a palm on me. Neither we do. So if you've done all your loops, just going through a very old sail. The older the sail, the heavier the webbing, the harder it will be to do this. So there, you just want to pick up one of the stitches that you had in there. So essentially I'm just diving underneath one of the threads, and then you just loop back through. And that's just a basic knot. Then what you want to do is just bang another hole back where you were. If you have your palm, you'll be able to get it through pretty easily. But if you've lost it and you need to do what I'm doing, you'll be all good. So you just bring it back through, that just creates the hitch. So you've just half hitched it, essentially. By diving back in, then you can do your knot. So all we do, and all you need to do, is just split those two bits of thread back open again. Okay? And then you just tie knots. Do it a bit longer. I just wanted to have that left in case I need it later. So yeah, you just keep doing knots over and over again. Now if you've got a lighter on board or it's one of those hot knives, you can just melt that down, or you can just leave it. But if you melt it down, I pretty much just cut it just above it and hold that together. And then when you burn it with that much length, so that when it's burnt down, I might even have a lighter somewhere. Anyone smoke? Yep. Catch. Get that on camera too? You're awesome. So if you just burn that, it'll all just shrivel up, and just use your hand. And then you just kind of make it hard on where it was. So it's pretty easy. You could all do this. I'll make it look hard so I can charge you more, you know that, don't you? All right, so that's that. Everybody pretty clear on that stuff? So board, spike, hammer, we use them all the time, so you're allowed to too. Put it back in your little cardboard pouch. They're really cool if anyone's got them. You can put all your needles in it as well. I'm not going to try and throw that lighter back because it's all on camera, and if I do it bad, it's all bad. All right, how long is this taking, Martin? Am I going a bit far? Okay. I rushed through that bit so I could do this bit longer. Yeah. So where did I say I was going to go to from there? I think we were just going to talk about the spinnakers next, but I'll just show you these. I didn't bring this in to repair it, by the way. It was just a nice bit of sail that had some slides attached to it. So a common way to attach your slides is with the eyelets. Some of you will have just a webbed-on sewn piece. I do it myself. You just have some zigzag that's attaching it to the sail. If it fails like this, it's actually really easy to fix because essentially all you have to do is the same as what's there. That's straight from the sail maker. Use your spike to bang through the hole as well. You can just make life easier for yourself. And you want to do at least 2 or 3 runs minimum so that you get plenty of stitch build up. The more thread, the better. And just keep banging the spike through it so it's easy to dive in and out. So all this one's done, and it's pretty basic, and it's all you guys have to do. That's why I brought it in, is that essentially you can just run up and down. Battens and stuff you'll see, sometimes they'll have, and even on the top here, they'll have one that kind of dives in here, but essentially just doing a run along there will just keep that from rocking too much, but I think that's just far too technical, and you can just get away with what that is without going and trying to be a sailmaker and making it for the rest of its life. If you've got just the basic webbing that's sewn back to back through the slide and it rips, just do the same thing and use a bolt. So essentially you can just put your bit of webbing through the eye here, back onto the sail, and then bolt it through. So essentially you create your stitches, now your bolts. If you want to be sure that it's nice and it's going to stay where it is and stay safe, just run a row of stitching across, and you can do it on any of them, just diving into the webbing a few times so that you can bond it to the sail. So essentially use the bolt to get it fixed, and then use the stitching to guarantee that it stays there. So I think you might have those Ronstan ball slide ones. So you might have a similar issue if it's just a bit of a webbing loop going through your car. You just want to get that bolt and bolt it in, get it clamped, and then do a nicer bit later if you can, just hand sewing it through the luff tape. And you'll definitely need to use your spike and hammer with that. So unfortunately, any damage you do to your mainsail, apart from ones like this, you're going to need to take it off. But that's why you just don't make that board too long, so you can just plonk it on the side of on the deck and not risk breaking some carbon if you do have carbon in your deck. So if you've got a hot knife, use that. So yeah, you'll see here, essentially the rule is always end the webbing facing towards the slide, so that when we start our webbings, we actually have it, I think I'll be able to draw it, I'll have to think about it, but essentially you've got your slide and then the loop where it's going through. So your webbing's going through that section. It'll look along here. If this is the sail, essentially you start the webbing inside, go around, and then end there. So you've got your two webbings over the top. Does that make sense? So again, if that's your sail, you'll put your bolt through here and then just do a hand stitch through just inside the edge. There'll be like some bolt rope down the luff, and you can use the straight stitch or whatever's there just to dive into it, but especially remember to use that spike just to break through it. But have a look at that one. That's pretty much what I would do anyway if I was repairing it. So if you are unsure, just have a good look at it. But there's a few photos online as well that you might want to take a photo of just to see how it's finished. Spinnaker. I'm going to try this, and I haven't done it before. It's good. Right.
I think last race, a lot of the competitors ended up fixing their kite during the race.
Yep.
Quite, like over half the fleet that do it with a major kite repair.
So if you've got a major kite repair, I'll grab that little pen so I can show what Martin was talking about before. The easiest, you've got to make sure it's flat, otherwise it just won't stick properly. So it's not about the shape, that's why I want it to be flat. It's so that once it's stuck, if you stick a sail like that and have a bit loose at one end, that's just going to load up again and break through that repair. So you do need to get it flat. It's not so it looks pretty, it's so that it holds pretty as well. So as Martin was saying before, the simplest way to do it is to just get on top of it. If this was imagine this is giant and this is me just in one section, you just want to pin out a small section each time, so that when you get to the end, essentially with any repair I ever do, you can see just for this small amount of area, you can get a lot of range if you get it wrong. So if I started sticking it up that way, by the time I got to the end, it would be loose on one end and tight on the other. So the easiest way to do it is to just get your knees on either side and pull against yourself. If you see, you can probably see it in the light. If you rock it around, you'll see it start to bend to one side. Just find the happy medium. That's all I've ever done. If you've got someone downstairs helping you, it's okay, but try and get your hand just either side of that, just creating that flat spot, and then you can just mark it. And these are those nick marks that Martin was talking about before. It just makes it easier when you come to sticking them together to get it flat without having to pin the whole thing out again. So I'll do it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, some of you might be lucky and have like a table in the middle. Yeah. Yeah, if you've got the sailmaker pins, the only place to put them is through the seams. If you have a big distance between them and you're worried about it, just cut off a little bit of sticky and essentially just stick it on, and you can put it in there, but I don't suggest it. It's just if you're really strap for luck and have, for some reason, really big gaps between your seams. So the other way to make sure, and it's the same as the nick marks, is once you get that flat, you can just get those nick marks in the one spot and then just put some little bits on there. This will just keep the sail in line and essentially make it easier to fix it later, because we're going to run a bit of tape over the top.
Should they be together or a slight gap?
So essentially you utilise just the width of the tape.
Should you bring the...
So you're bringing the sail, exactly right, you're bringing the sail together to an extent. You can see, this is the hard bit to explain, but essentially you can see a spinnaker where it's ripped and within reason how far apart it should be. It's, you know, if you have a look, if anyone wants to see it, you can see from a spinnaker all its thread lines and they pretty much line up. So it's not actually as hard to notice it if you know what you're looking for. So you're just looking for the threads where they end. So, and essentially it's been ripped from straight. So anyone with new sails, it's going to be very easy to see the difference. Old sails a bit harder, but old sails they'll just be very separated. So all we did here was essentially get the cloth flat so that it was in position. So by putting those nick marks, it wouldn't matter whether the sail had a rip that big or a sail rip as small as it is now. It just means you'd need a bigger bit to join it together. So you could actually have a rip that went along that distance and just make a big bit of sticky back. It makes it a bit harder, but you can do it. If you have a giant rip through the middle, sometimes it's easier to... what I've done with stuff for Hutspar is I've had some very large tears where it's stuck to the floor. So essentially if you just peel that back a little bit, and this is getting way too technical, so I'm going to stop as soon as I've done it, but essentially you can cut each end and have this end sticky and that bit not sticky, and then stick it over the patch like that. So that way, when you're sticking it all together, you can put something over the top, but the bit in the middle's not all sticking to the floor. So if you do have a repair like that, it's pretty rare. That's a good way to just stop it from sticking to the floor. That's if it's like a massive bit.
A strip of like we cut for the others.
In the middle? If it is this bad, whatever you're doing on this side will be getting, you'll just cut it out. So
But we put this on the same lines at first and then...
it would help, yeah. If you've got a bit like it and you could just utilise it 100%. I mean, it's just making it up as you go. If you think that's going to be easier than having bits along there. So essentially, if I was doing a repair where it was that... Yeah, if I was doing a repair with a big gap like that, you're going to be putting a new bit of cloth in no matter what. So we'll do this one first, and then I'll show you what you would do to actually fix a large hole. Yeah, they're always zigging and zagging. If it zigs and zags, it's essentially the best way to repair a spinnaker quickly and effectively is just multiple patches like I've done there, a bit longer. So essentially if it was a massive tear and you didn't know what to do, you could just put these almost next to each other all the way across and then just run a bit of tape straight along it. Now if it then zigged and zagged, it means that you could just follow the line of it and it wouldn't matter where you cut this, you just keep going with it. And it just makes, it is a lot easier. So once you've got all those together, you can just use that sticky just to run along that line. And because we've lined it up flat, essentially all you have to do is peel it all the way up, and because you've already stuck it all flat, you can just hold that one area. So if you were doing it, so all I'm doing is using the 2-inch tape. You have an imaginary line straight down the middle of the tape. That's the strongest point. So in this situation, for this repair, if I just wanted to leave it like that, as I suggested to the guys on Caddy, and as they did, that's when you can get a bit more serious and you can actually put bits across as well, as I was saying before. so you can actually reinforce it by sticking them over the top. Yeah, look, you can get away with probably just doing this on one side, the vertical ones, but the one along the tear you definitely want to have so you don't get any sticky. Just at least, it'll be it's a lot easier to flip that over now, and you can almost see the tape on most sails, and just run it along that edge. But you don't really care if it's back to back. So as long as you keep it down the middle of that tape, it's going to be very easy to do once you've done the effective repair on one side. Just do a basic cover up on the other side. And this stuff's sticky enough. I think your sail did the rest of the race, but essentially, if it's a massive hole and it's and it's zigging and zagging and you're not sure what to do, just pull this stuff out, plonk it on top, do it on the other side, and that's the quick, easy way to do it. If the sail's got a multiple amount of tears and all that, you just, as I said, do these little markers and with the stickies so it holds the cloth together, and then just all the way over the top. This stuff's so sticky. Use metho only. I've found that metho only kind of moves the salt around, but what it does do is it effectively dries the sail. So salt on sails it just builds up. Essentially, you want to make sure if you do metho it that you use a nice dry, clean rag afterwards and just sweep the salt off. It was really bizarre when I had a sail come in the other day on a little sports boat, and I could literally sweep the salt off. So if the sail's dry and it's not sticking, just dust it off. Don't try and use the metho, because if you use the metho, it's just going to melt the salt and just pretty much make the surface greasy for a fair amount of time. So if the sail's still dry, it's more effective to just sweep it off and actually wipe it. I've always told people to use metho, and I did this one job, and I was like, why is it so hard to stick to? I've done everything that I would normally do, and it was just because there was so much salt on it. And once it all dried, I just swept it off and it was fine. So yeah, metho is very effective to actually dry the sail, because as we all know, it dries quicker than water. So if you pour metho over the top of water, it mixes together and dries up quicker. But I'm no chemist. So the only other one that I wanted to have a play with, so essentially you've got two other options, and the main option being the repair if you have a large tear. It doesn't matter what tape it is. It's again something that you probably want to have some pre-made bits, and most of the repair kits I do have maybe the cloth width, maybe 1.5 meters of just like a strip with the double-sided tape on it. So again, you can just plonk it straight on. Instead of using heavy material, you've got the spinnaker stuff ready to go as well. So I think I've not cut any holes in this one, so I'll just cut that off. These are sharp, aren't they? So I'm just going to make this really rough. So essentially, you'll have a strip perfectly cut with very sharp scissors, and whatever your hole is, you want to have enough separation that you can cut it out. So if it's zigging and zagging, like Martin said, and it goes down there, you want to make sure that when you put the tape on, that essentially you've got the tape covering that whole hole. So you've got a bit of a gap between the two. So this tape's effectively going to become the sail. So if you want to put us... So if you had a very big tear, like we were talking about, you can put your bit of sticky across here so that bit of paper just doesn't stick it to the ground. That's the only reason you're doing it. You can stick it to the ground if you want, because it's your boat and it's up to you. So essentially, it's just like having a big bit of tape. You want to have the cloth flat, and we're just going to lay it over the top of what we had there. So once we've stuck it on, we can actually cut it away. So if you're lucky and you have some pins like Martin did, you can pin the sail out. But essentially this is just like, I always just get a little starting point, put your knee on it, pull it out flat again, and then just lay it down. Get one side done first, and then you can work around the other side. So this stuff's actually really sticky, and if you had 2 runs of this, it's almost like putting this stuff on. Just you've turned spinnaker cloth into its own repair tape. So once you've done that one, get that one out flat. It's about as good as you're going to be able to do it on a boat. So you just pull the cloth out flat, if you can. So most of you will get brand new pieces of cloth with tape on it. It's the same goes with headsails and mainsails. If you scrunch up the cloth, it makes it relevant or makes it similar to the cloth you're sticking to. So if I go and use a brand new piece of spinnaker cloth and try and stick it to an old piece of spinnaker cloth, it just makes it really hard to stick down because it's too flat almost. So having a nice loose bit of cloth, so the best way to do it is to just scrunch it up. Scrunch up whatever you're putting on there so that it makes it a bit easier to stick down. If you don't have time for that, don't worry about it. So if you've done this repair, you should have at least one row of that 1-inch double-sided tape just to keep it down, and then give it a good rub down, just pressure sensitive. This stuff holds sails together when we use it for dinghies and they don't even have to repair them afterwards. So if you want to go to the effort, you can go back over, and if the repair is like that, the tear is like that, you can just cut. And what will happen is if you've got those nice sharp scissors, which I don't seem to have tonight, your scissors will be able to work along where that bit of tape was that you fixed it. If you just slide it. Don't chomp. Once you get to the edge where the tape is, you can just slide along. And if you've got an unpicker on the boat, they're really easy to do the same. You just turn them upside down. So that's if you want to get technical, because the tear is just going to be a fluffy bit on the other side. You can actually cut that away. It's high risk. You can probably cut through the sail as well, but if you do, just get another bit of tape and admit defeat and keep repairing it. But that'll just get rid of that bit instead of having to have multiple bits of sticky. It's exactly how I do it in the loft. So, yeah. So and it is pretty easy to do. I mean, you guys can have a play with it if you like. I'll leave this stuff here, but it actually will look half good. Yeah. I didn't think about that before I started this. So the only other one I wanted to play with was that they swear to God that this Dr. Sales stuff actually works on this. So I did a little dot of spinnaker cloth, and we're going to grab some of that Dr. Sale, which is going to get seriously messy. How are we going, Martin? All right. Comes with 2 nozzles. I used it earlier today, so hopefully it still opens.
It's epoxy, so it's a bit like an arrow.
Yeah, so it's just got 2 part. It is. It stinks. So you just twist that in. It is messy. That's why I brought in this nice bit of cloth. If you want to get fancy, you can put some double-sided tape around there so it all gets contained, but we're not going to do that. So essentially, you'll see pictures of it, but video of this, but essentially this stuff you just squeeze out. It doesn't come out very quick. It's very loose when you get it out. So all we're going to do is just zigzag it.
So once you open it, that's it, is it?
I think so. I mean, you can put that cap back on it, and
Yeah, the nozzle one you showed.
the nozzle's dead, definitely. And they only give you 2 nozzles, but you can buy more, so it's very tedious trying to push it through. That's one thing's for sure. That big tube would be much more fun. So I think, like in this situation, you might have like a crisscross tear. Like it might just have like a cut through there or something like that. You put some of this stuff on there just to kind of patch it up, but you want to make it get a bit more serious with it because you're worried about it ripping. Smell it. It's good, isn't it? So you could just plonk it because you've already repaired it. It's going to go real well for me. Malleable, fantastic. I actually brought in a little stick for this. glue will actually spread. It's just offcuts of batten. So you can spread it around. It just gets it a bit, brings it out to the edge. This is where it starts to get messy. So that actually works all right. Well, as I said, I haven't tried it before, so I'm just winging it. But 8 minutes. And the other thing is that we're actually able to do this on a wet sail as well. So if your spinnaker is wet, they're claiming it'll dry. I don't believe that part, but I'd definitely dry the spinnaker cloth before you did it. But so I've just let that all just ooze out the edges. You don't care about the messiness factor. It will peel off later on if you want it to. All that, yeah. If you put you want to get fancy, you can put masking tape around it or anything like that. But essentially, all I've done is sweep out the glue until I could see it, and then you know that you're getting that coverage. By zigging and zagging, it just gets the coverage of the amount of glue you need, and then you just sweep out from inside out on it like anything. If you were spreading something, you always start from the inside and go out. Sticky back's the same. Anything you're doing, always stick from the middle out. So that's kind of cool. And that'll be an effective patch as well. Quite strong. Use the material. It's kind of messy though. If you did anything on a sail or on a mainsail, headsail, spinnaker, and you're worried about whether or not you've done a good enough job, just get some sticky back, stick it over the top. Like even if you did one of these and you were just unsure about it, just get a big patch of sticky back and stick it on top. At least by doing all this stuff, you've connected the sail together and got it all right, and then that big patch is easier to put on anyway. So putting a big patch on, as you saw, without having it all flat and stabilised, it'd be very hard. So you do the little things first so that you can put a big thing on afterwards. There's no stitching that you can do, so you've just got to really just rub down hard on that double-sided tape. If you weren't sure about the strength of that seam, you can actually use some of this stuff over the top of it, and that effectively gives it another 25 mil of strength. Yeah, so if you want to, you should really have a strip already made for yourself. But if you just cut it out of a bit that you already had, you can just run your scissors along the edge. It's actually pretty easy if you've got sharp scissors. But the unpickers are the good ones. If you've got a brand new unpicker and you just flip it over where the red stopper is, and you can just run it along it. And because it's not sharp on the bottom, you're less likely to dig into the sail. So what I always do is get my brand new scissors and then just nub off the front, just turn it and make it nice and soft so it hasn't got any chance of digging in. And that way, whatever you put it in, it's not going to dig into the floor if you do drop them.
So you don't double-sided tape the ends closed?
You do, yeah. You definitely do. So you're just creating a box. So there's a patch just next to you of a circle, I think. Yeah. So it's the same thing, whether it's a circle or a square. You just want to make sure that you cover the edges off. So I think that's cool for the spinnakers. Someone else can have a go at this Dr. Sale stuff, I think.
I was going to make a suggestion that perhaps when you cover everything,
Yep.
we wrap up the same as the same word.
Okay.
Maybe just hang around and people muck
Yeah.
around.
Yep, definitely.
Is that good for everyone?
Any repair I'm going to do on a mainsail or a headsail is exactly the same. It's you want to stabilise the area, put sticky back over the part that's torn, and then whether you use sticky back, patch material with glue, whatever, you just use it. The only good thing about this patch that I was going to do on this one, and I'll just quickly show it before we wrap up, is that with a tear like that, you can have your double-sided tape, as I said, outside of it, and then we can essentially just glue that one section back to the... Yeah, so essentially you're doing the same as a spinnaker repair on a mainsail, and that's whatever you've got there will hopefully be as strong as it is, and then you can just bang some sticky back on the other side. You don't need to cut that patch away, you can just leave it and sticky back it. It doesn't need to look pretty, so yeah, I'm happy to...
Any questions? I mean, like looking around.
Yeah.
That's what we're...
On this one here, mate, you said glue the outer edge.
Yes. So with the, we'll go through it afterwards, but essentially, just like I did that other spinnaker repair, we just want to run that tape out so that it's stuck down to the edge. And then, where did I put that? Did we throw that? Oh, it's good. I don't get it on the carpet. So essentially all I did with that one over there is I just did the same zigging and zagging all the way along. And then just spread it down, spread it out, squeegeed it out. And what happened was this edge was still kind of flappy, so I just ran the nozzle right on the edge of the sail, or the edge of the patch, sorry. And then by doing that, it just gave that edge, that nice smooth edge that it's got there, and just let the glue kind of hang out a bit. And if you don't want the mess going everywhere, you just need to put some masking tape right on the edge. The bit about the pen on these, if you are doing a repair like that, before you pull that tape out, you can actually mark it along the edge so that you've got something to line up to, and do the same on this side so that when you stick it down, so you've stuck this down, then you're going to need to go to the other side and stick that one. You could move the sail in the meantime and then you won't have a line up. So you can do some nick marks as well, some match marks, and much for muchness. So yeah.
So you should rely on 25 mils.
So yeah, the glue, so that's not relative to what the size of boat is. So we always work on with glue that you should have as many millimetres of glue as you do feet of boat. So if you've got a 40-footer, you should have a minimum of 40 mil of glue. So 50-footer, minimum of 50, but do more. Like, just get more of those tubes. But yeah, you want to just have as much as possible, but minimum, I would say, is boat length of in millimetres. So that's always been a kind of what the glue companies have always told us, so we trust them. Ish. All good. Anyone else got any questions?
That's fantastic,
Sweet.
mate. I think Mike will hang around, but I'd like just to say thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.